exact words before they're deleted as typed. Despite intensive research efforts, the causative agent of AIDS has not yet been identified. You cannot be clearer than that. This is in the paper that's internationally claimed to prove it. If you see, these are all the alterations made in this paper. That is the rewritten conclusion, totally crossed out and changed.
Here is my concern. Would this have been allowed in any other area of science or medicine, where original conclusions do not confirm the existence of a pathogen or a causative agent? It is still speculative. There are questions about it. And yet someone has determined, without the science to back it up, that we should go with it. Now, where are all the safeguards? Where are all the people who are able to come back from Science magazine or Nature magazine, the British Medical Journal, the Lancet, the Journal of the American Medical Association, the Journal of Biology, Immunology, Molecular Biology? Think of all the different publications, over 100,000 plus publications confirming that HIV is the single cause of AIDS. And that what you're providing us, if we are to accept what you're providing us as accurate, that none of that can be proven. Is that what you're saying?
None of it can be proven.
So the entire industry of AIDS is misguided, misled, even with the best of intentions of those involved in it, with some deadly consequences. Wouldn't you believe that this deserves a major federal investigation and an investigation by the Attorney General? And wouldn't you not believe that if there are proven wrongful deaths, this could involve millions of people involved in class action lawsuits against Gallo and the lab and the National Cancer Institute and all the people that...
TB. A TB patient would test HIV positive without any need to be infected. These are people in the Presidential Commission on AIDS. They cannot be higher up. They wrote the paper saying this. It actually says the HIV test cannot be relied on in Africa because microbacteria are so common in Africa. It says even the contacts of TB patients will test positive with the HIV test. The young men, they're mostly men. Last year in England, only about less than 50 women were found newly infected. UK-born women were found newly infected with HIV. 5,000 men, most of whom were gay, were found. But fungi test positive. This has been known for 20 years. The people that were dying in New York, dying in LA, dying in San Francisco, dying in London, had fungal infections of the throat, they're very bad candidates who could hardly swallow anything. Their lungs were full of fungi, fungal pneumonia. Funguses, just like in the wild, eat up rubbish, eat dead and dying cells. That's what they do in woods, that's what they do in forests, that's what they do inside our body. If these funguses test positive in the HIV test, then what is the test telling you? That you need an antifungal treatment. I've had all these other inconsistencies, but none of them are quite the same as finding the fraudulent papers, which I say, I can't think of any other word to call them.
Now let's go to some specific areas concerning this. If you start off with a false premise, if you're claiming you have a single virus, a retrovirus, and by the way, there are an awful lot of retroviruses, and I have interviewed leading retrovirologists, the leading ones in the United States, and I've asked them, how many other retroviruses have you discovered that can do what AIDS can do? And without exception, they say none. Are you familiar with any other retroviruses that can cause disease like this?
No.
Well, then there's supposed to be this one exception to the rule. I remember one of the professors picking up a book this thick and saying, here's a book just on retroviruses. It's about 6 inches thick. And everything that we know is in this book. And there's not a single retrovirus in this book that does what HIV does. So then my statement to this person was, if you have this virus and you're dying, shouldn't we have a lot of the virus in your body? If you're dying of hepatitis, if you're dying of herpes 6, if you're dying of cancer, if you're dying of anything else, there has to be enough in the body to overwhelm the body's immune system and specific organ systems. You can't be dying of pneumonia if you have none of the bacteria and viruses in your lung that precipitate it. You can't die of cancer if nobody can find any neoplasm or any cancer cells in your body. You couldn't die by being shot 300 times and there are no bullet holes or bullets. And yet this is the kind of science that we've been expected to accept unquestioningly by the scientific community. And those scientists who have dared venture into saying, but hold on, when I finally look for the evidence, I don't see it. Can you show me the evidence? And in a few moments, in another part of this, we're going to get to some of the dissident scientists and what they have to say about this. Could you address the idea that no one's ever been able to actually find the HIV virus in HIV patients or AIDS patients?
Well, even Robert Garler couldn't find the... He did a famous test at the time he was doing his experiments, and I think it was, we found it in somewhere between 10% or 80% of the patients tested. With such a wide range of variables, so where was it? 10% or 80%? He said 10 to 80. But retroviruses we now know a great deal more about. There's been some wonderful cellular biology done more recently. We now know that retroviruses are used by the body to protect the embryo. In fact, multiple pregnancy is now a risk factor for testing positive, because retroviruses are present in a woman's uterus, helping protect that tiny embryo. We now find that retroviruses, the cells make them to carry repair DNA, and there's several papers I've recently read, from major peer-reviewed papers, saying that retroviruses can repair tumors. They're one of the mechanisms that the cells use to repair each other. The cells need to communicate, and they send codes, genetic information, from one cell to the other. This new cellular biology was inspired by people like Barbara McClintock, Nobel laureate. She talked about how our cells react with sensitivity towards the environment and how they repair themselves. Our cells are quite brilliant in how, but right at the beginning of this research, when Robert Garler was at work, they found retroviruses close to cancer cells. They found them going into cancer cells, traveling these tiny. It's just the time when electron microscope was invented. They were just saying, oh look, there they are, retroviruses, near the cancer cells. So it was like eureka, we found the infective agent that's causing cancer. So President Nixon launched a war on cancer, thinking we'd find a vaccine against cancer. And then it was discovered by many eminent Nobel laureate scientists that the same retroviruses were produced by healthy, non-damaged, non-infected cells. So suddenly the whole theory collapsed. But Robert Garler had found some retroviruses which he blamed on cancer.
Can you repeat that? You hit the microphone.